Hello, and welcome to the podcast There Are No Good Games, where we discuss our opinions on past, present, and future games, as well as a whole load of other filler to keep us sane while we wait for a good game to play. Let's begin. So, Ollie, we are in 2024. How are you feeling?
That's true.
We're in the new year.
I'm thinking one year older. That's how I feel.
You have to think into the future now.
Same stuff, different year. That's what I think is going to be. I mean, what's the difference between the 31st of December to the 1st of January, really?
Expectations. It's all about goal setting. I think new year, new job, new roles, you know? Like, that's how I always view it. It's like a fresh restart. It's a fresh new save on the game. You can now make what you want of it. You can go hunt achievements you didn't get last year, and you can also reset and relearn skills you've forgotten previously.
I mean, that's very kind of you, isn't it, really? Because you don't finish any actual video games. You do start a new save. So that does kind of... I mean, I feel like you're the type of guy who, just because you haven't played in 2 weeks, you'd start a new save because you don't remember what you were doing 2 weeks ago.
I think that applies to games like Baldur's Gate, but I'm a little bit hurt by that. But
you're not going to make any progress if you do that in Baldur's Gate, surely.
No,
surely.
But I just find Baldur's Gate's like, it's a good game, but it's a slog because I've been playing it with my partner. And it's absolutely hilarious every time we play it because we're like, cool, we'll play it again. And then a week later we play it and we're like, what are we meant to be doing again? And why do we have this like creature with us? I don't know. Yeah.
Just don't wait so long to play in between games then.
True. I should.
I think that's the real end result, isn't it? Don't take breaks from games.
Okay. Just keep on playing.
They have that on, well, like some games have that on their loading screens, don't they? It's like, remember to take a break.
Well, like World of Warcraft.
Go touch some grass. Yeah, I think that is
what the internet cafe. Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah, but I don't think they mean 2 weeks. I think they mean, take an hour, and then come back.
An hour.
I'm pretty sure that's it. I think for every hour of looking at a screen, you're meant to take like 5 to 15 minutes looking.
Yeah, there's like a 40-20 rule, if I remember correctly, from like work stuff. They do like desk assessment safety, isn't it? Like every 40 minutes, go have a night break for 20 minutes, and you're like, okay.
Oh, that's a load of rubbish, isn't it? Really, like you're gonna get no work done. I mean, like you just lose focus and concentration. It's stupid. It's a stupid rule.
Yeah, I do find it kind of. I don't know. It's always difficult to focus sometimes, but there we go. But new year, new episode of the podcast. How are you feeling about everything? Is there anything you want to kind of get off your chest for the new year? Is there anything you want to discuss? Is there anything you want to achieve this year in the There Are No Good Games podcast?
Are there any things I want to achieve? I mean, not really. I think, in this sense, the things kind of just come to us, don't they, in the kind of episodes? They kind of, we have some things we have ideas for. They kind of come out into the podcast. We talk about them, and then we ramble on about them for an extreme amount of time. And then you have to edit it down. So maybe cut down on the rambling is the achievement, really.
I think the rule was last time I can only say 2 okays, and at that point you have to cut off the segment and move on, right?
Okay. Good. Right, that's the first one. So now we know. I don't know if is it the same person has to say okay, or is it?
I think that when there's a low, if you go okay, and then there's a silence for like 2 seconds. It's the end of the segment.
That's the cut.
I think that should be our new
rule.
New rule for There Are No Good Games. If someone says okay twice, it's a way of saying we're done now. We're going to move on. And even if we have a guest on, it doesn't matter. We'll just change subject on them and just carry on going with our podcast.
Just keep going. You also got to keep cutting the okays out because people will then be expecting, the next bit. You just want to be able to jump into the next segment, don't you? Really? So,
exactly.
So just don't say okay. You just got to know. What goals do you have then for the podcast?
I think for the podcast, like for me personally, there's 2 sets of goals. I'm enjoying doing the editing and stuff like that. I want to go back and cut shorts out of some stuff. And then we've got a super secret surprise, much as last year when we did with the animations and the like vibey lo-fi-ness of it. There's another surprise that will be coming out this year, which you will hopefully get to experience in one of the episodes, which is, I'm going to spoil it now because hopefully it'll already be done by this point. We're going to start doing some animatics. Animatics?
Oh.
Animatics, is that the word?
I don't know. Sounds interesting though.
Like short out of context, crudely drawn stuff that just looks a little janky, but it's funny enough that you can kind of talk about it. I think when I pitched this to you, you pitched the Nottingham Pokemon cards trading auctions and calling up your neighbors in case that they have Pokemon cards, so you can get them raided and all their stuff seized by the police.
I've made bank off that idea.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the goal for the year. And then maybe try and get like, I don't know, 100 people listening. That'd be a good goal for the year, I feel.
That would be a good goal for sure. Well, yes, it's it's good to have goals, definitely. And obviously, the games we're going to be talking about there, the developers for them, they have goals. Whether they meet our expectations is a different question. So, but really, it's us who judge whether we meet the expectations or not, isn't it? Really? So.
Yeah, exactly. So you can only hold yourself to account at the end of it. When you release your game or you release a podcast into the ether, it's either going to go swimmingly well and you're going to sweep the game awards, or it's going to be absolutely appalling and you have to use your own awards to then bolster it up and say how great a game yours was.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me.
Perfect. So on the conversation topic of games, what do you think makes a compelling game? Because I was having a look at this as I was flicking through Steam, as I've set my resolution from what you've given me last year to only pick one game a month to play and not buy a bunch of crap mini games.
Yes.
What do you think makes a compelling game or grabs your attention? So when you're looking through Steam, what are the factors that you look for in a good game that's like worth the money?
Is this me personally, or just like what I think in general should captivate people?
You could do you personally, and you could do like a holistic, agnostic view of it.
Yeah, so what captivates me on Steam? Well, yeah, I guess if you've got the rule where you can only buy, one game a month?
One game a month.
The first thing I look at is probably the name of the game. If it's got a bad name, then it's as you could say, game over. It's not being clicked on. So I think like names are important, but obviously that doesn't define, what's in the game. But if it's got a bad name, it probably hasn't had much else thought going into it. Yeah. It's like the guy on Twitter who said Starfield was going to be bad because of the main menu screen, and everyone on Twitter, it was an uproar, and he was actually right. So anyway, so the name is a key thing. Steam will obviously have all these rules about what you can actually have in your banners and the different kind of hero images that get shown around. So obviously they do play a big part of it. You can kind of tell from like a logo as well, because you have to have the logo in all the hero images on Steam. So if the logo doesn't have much, like, it's like don't judge a book by its cover, but actually it completely is, because part of making the game is also like the actual marketing and naming and like how you present it. It's kind of like a key part of it, really. So you absolutely should. But I guess, like, what do I look for in a game? If you go to like new and trending, there's nothing there for me right now I can see whatsoever that would interest me. But then you go to like top sellers, and then you see some games, and obviously the good thing about top sellers is not all of them are released. So actually you can still see upcoming games that are, people are pre-ordering, I guess, that are coming out soon. Somehow in top sellers, there's a game called Contain, which I hover over it and it says overall user reviews, mostly negative, but only 15. So somehow this game has had loads of people buy it, and it came out today, but it is apparently not good. But that's another part of the kind of review, is that I do hover over it and I look at the user reviews, and that quickly tells me whether I should continue looking or not.
Okay, that's fair enough. No, I was just curious. So you look for user reviews, the name, and kind of like the generalized branding. So it has to look good. It has to be a good cover. So if you were to compare games to books, you'd be looking for a flashy cover, good name, good kind of like weighted book, and you'd be like, this is the book for me, or this is the game
well,
for me.
Not necessarily. Well, I mean, like, I think like there's, you've kind of said like, what do I actually look for? But obviously looking at the image and the name is kind of more of a subconscious decision. I'm not going and being like, what names are going to stand out to me today? You know, you kind of like, that's the whole point, is they're meant to captivate you. And then your subconscious makes you want to look at it more because you're interested in it. And before you even the thought has come into your head, you've already hovered over it. And at that point, that's when obviously on Steam comes up with the user reviews and then images as well. So it's, you know, those are quite key. But also, you know, I guess the thing is, I don't often just hear about games first on Steam, really. You know, I do follow a lot of games before they come out.
Okay.
And so I think, you know, obviously if I've heard of it before, the name recognition will play a huge part. You know, like I already know Persona 3 Reloaded is coming out on PC, you know, and obviously that's going to be in the top sellers for a while now before it comes out. So, you know, I'm more likely then to see that name recognition, click it. I've never heard of Contain. I mean, I only clicked it, to be honest with you, because it said mostly -15, and I was wondering how a game like that is in top sellers. But, you know, there's stuff like that, I think, that captivating. But yeah, I think having like a background knowledge of games helps massively in making a decision on Steam, because you kind of avoid all the crap and you only go for things that you've either heard of before or are very, very similar to something you kind of already play, and then you might check into it.
Okay, so that leads me on to my next bit, which is like, do you look for specific genres or specific developers when like picking out games? Like, let's say like Devolver, you pick up a couple of their games, or you like strategy, so you like, oh, I like SimCity, I like Anno, I like Long Winter, whatever it's called, that Frost Simulator one. Yeah, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, Frostpunk. I think like that's probably is the norm, but that's not what I do, because I don't go I'm looking for new games kind of thing. Again, like I said, like I'll know what games are coming out, so I'll see it and buy it. You know, if I already know it, it's like a game should have already probably been on my wish list for a couple of weeks before I buy it.
Okay.
Obviously, like something like when Lethal Company came out, I bought it like day 2 of it coming out, so kind of just before it was popular. But that's because it already was on a good trend, and I can already see how it was presented, the way the trailer didn't take itself too seriously, but also showed it had content. And that's the kind of thing. I think like a lot of developers don't think too much about their Steam page because they just care about the game, but actually it matters a lot. It matters a lot. And that's why, like, I guess some games like that will stick out to me that I haven't heard of before, because why would have I?
Yeah, that's fair.
Because they're indie games that without a publisher. So it does kind of come to that bit. So I don't really go look at, I feel like playing a strategy game. The games kind of come to me.
Okay, so you like,
rather than
you follow
genre.
them, you watch them grow, and then you pluck them when they're ready to be picked and they're ripe.
Or they're released, basically.
No,
yeah.
okay.
They have to have cooked in my oven of my head before I buy.
Okay, no, that's fair. Makes sense. I think for me,
what about you?
So I think for me, it's I look for like genres, or I look for like reviews. I'm one of these people who, if I like a game and it's like over a certain price, I would heavily research it and kind of dig into it a bit. So trying to think of a good recent example. Monster Hunter is always a good one. So I watched a couple of reviews for that. Watch some gameplay of it, watch some guys playing on Twitch. Like, I like to do my research and I like to kind of say, is this game going to be for me, or is this going to be something that's going to sit on my shelf and then be unplayed, and then I'm going to get shamed by the Steam Wrapped yearly roundup for it? A good example is, I think it's Lost Company. I've been looking at that for quite a bit. Have researched it. It's probably going to be my February pick. It's like it's like a strategy game mixed with like a spaceship kind of fighter defender wave sort of stuff. It's the right amount of cozy, it's the right amount of vibe and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, okay, this is the game for me. And I've seen enough people play it. I've seen some gameplay and like demos of it, read some reviews, and I think that's kind of it. Like detailed research.
So, but you mentioned like pricing earlier, but then do you like equate hours you will play the game to money spent?
Oh yeah, no, exactly. Definitely. Like, I think a really good example for me is, I'm going to use Monster Hunter World here. So I bought it on the PS4 when it initially came out. I then bought it for the PC last year, and I started getting back into it again. I've already clocked like 20 or 30 hours into it on my Steam Deck / my PC. Lovely game, really easy to play. And it's kind of like the dream game, which is pick up and put down. Like we talked about this earlier, where it's like, you don't need to play a game for weeks and then to understand it. You can pick it up, go, oh yeah, I need to go kill this monster, pick you up and go out, go kill it, and then come back and then drop it again for another couple of days. So yeah,
I think it's
time is
important.
great.
Yeah, I think it's important because that's another thing to mention, that if I don't think I'll play a game very often, or I don't think it'll last, I'm less likely to buy it.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Because that's why I like play games like, for example, Final Fantasy 14 MMO. Have played World of Warcraft MMO, iRacing, consistent online service, continuous. All these things are kind of subscriptions, but then like games like, for example, Elden Ring, for example, that's like just an ongoing thing, constant. And obviously, we played the the co-op together, and we still got to do that, preferably before the DLC comes out next month. So that's a leak, by the way. So that's something I've got to do. And then things like like Hogwarts Legacy, when it came out last year, I finished all that. I knew I wanted to play through the entire story, so it was worth the money for that. Obviously games can be disappointments when you buy them, and they're not perfect all the time. Look at like Cyberpunk, for example. That saved itself now, and that's now considered a very, very good game of this decade. Will Starfield come back? It's possible. I don't know. There's rumors that Elder Scrolls is actually slated for 2026, which is a lot earlier than what people expected. So, maybe they're going to kill off what they want to do with Starfield and just kind of go to the next thing, really, which is probably better.
I think for me personally, the expensive games like Starfield, Elder Scrolls, and all that sort of stuff, I want to see people play it for a bit, and I want to try and get like the general anticipation now going forward. There's been too many times where they've hyped up a game to crap. They've done day one releases, day zero releases, all that sort of stuff. You play it, and it's not up to par yet, and it's not being like perfected or finished, but they've pitched it as a really high game. And then, as we talked about, it's time versus money. So, like, the expensive AAA titles are like 40, 50, 60 pounds now. For me, I have to really weigh up and go, am I going to get my full 60 pounds out of this? Like, I view it almost like £1 an hour. If I can get 60 hours playtime out of it.
£1 an hour? Wow, really? For a game? Like, I think that's quite a low, like, as in, I would say, taking an average wage of how much you would pay to work yourself, I think imagine if you were paid £1 of your time per hour.
Mm-hmm. No, but I think for me, for instance, a game has to recoup that for me. So a good example is Lethal Company, as we're talking about. I think we've easily cleared the price the price bracket of $10.99 or whatever it was. Like,
yeah, but for you, it was £8. But then you're saying like eight hours, which I think is like, that's slightly different for like a game like that. I think with AAA games, I would say you're at least looking maybe £3-4, maybe £5 an hour, really. Because you're not always, especially with like story-driven games. If you're just expecting a game to fill it in with crap, so it just fills your time, it wastes your time rather than giving a good experience, that's a slight issue, I think. So I think you got to be like more. I think the part of it is this worth the money based on the time? So you look up, and most reviews will say how long it takes to do it. Luckily, so if the game says like Hogwarts Legacy, which I think was like maybe 18, 20, 22 hours around that point, like depending on if you rush through areas or not, like. That for 60 quid is £3 an hour. I think 20 hours of your time, which could be over the course of like a week of if you're not paying all day, that's pretty fair for me for like a AAA game.
No, that's fair.
I think it depends heavily on the game.
Yeah, like I was gonna say, I think for me, I like stuff where it's got a little bit of breadth and depth to it. So like Spider-Man's a good example. You can go off and run off and do the main story mission quite easily in, according to howlongtobeat.com, 17 hours. You want to do the main quest and side stuff, it's 25 hours. For me, Spider-Man was like a main and side quest kind of venture, so it kind of made sense. But I get what you're saying. I think you want to make sure you feel satisfied. I just use that like pound equation just to kind of get me out of the way. So it's like, call it £2 an hour, call it £1 an hour. That's the kind of bracket I want to go into. I want to be able to at least say I played double the price of it, if that makes sense. Or at least the equivalent. No, but like you go, I mean, like
on the street. On the street with you.
Well, even like New Game Plus is like, I would say that still applies to it. So if you take Elden Ring, if you finish it and you redo it again, I'd say that counts into the time. It's holistic time played versus like specific things.
But that's for like someone who wants, like, I would say actually the percentage of people who actually play New Games Plus is probably extremely low.
Yeah,
The number
not
of people
bad.
who buy a game. I think, like, again, games provide different opportunities for different people, right? So something like Elden Ring, for example, people will just want to play through once and be, they're not going to necessarily go adventuring to every little area and learn the story. They don't care. Someone who does that is obviously going to get less time out of the game. However, they might come out of the game with a good, if not better, experience than someone who's so driven to killing every single boss, and that's the challenge they do. And kind of like, instead of it being like a challenge which they probably do enjoy, they end up slaving away and they feel it's more of a chore. And so I think there's definitely a balance here between, like, in some way it's about respecting people's time, because you can go, this game's worth hundreds of hours of playtime, when 30 hours of that is trying to solve every single puzzle collectible, which many people are not going to be doing. And clearly they're only going to be paying for the 20 hours, less than that possibly, when they buy the game of the main story. So I think that's really important, is you've got to respect, as a game developer, you've got to show that you're respecting the person's time. And I think that doesn't happen. That's still something that a lot of game developers are trying to solve and do better.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think two prime examples is if you take Resident Evil 2, the remake, lovely game, 8 hours or 9 hours or 10 hours to beat, basically. Really good game, really well paced, and had a lot of stuff going through it, and it was very different each time you play a different level. But then you've got like the Assassin's Creed franchise, which, no offense, I think just like goes, oh yeah, we'll just copy and paste all this stuff multiple times. You can just do the exact same experience, but you'll slowly make progress to your point of like, do they respect your time or not? So completely agree on that one. It's all about like fulfillment and being respected. So yeah, you're completely right.
Speaking of games that we find, obviously 2024 has all these new games, as we mentioned. And, it's funny, we started off the podcast, the first one ever, we were recording just after, the Summer Games Fest and games coming out soon at that point, and we spoke about games like Starfield, spoke about the 20 Warhammer games that were coming out from that point onwards, as well as other things. But obviously we're now approaching, as this is like we're nearly at the end of Jan when this podcast comes out, so we've got a few things to look forward to, already a month into the year, getting ready for February. February is quite a big month for games that people may or may not be excited about. I guess it depends. Persona 3 does come out. Obviously, it's a remake in the style, like modernization of the game completely, in a style of like Persona 5. And so that's for people like JRPGs, that's going to be quite good. I've never played the original of that one, but a lot of people say that's the best story of a Persona game. We have games like Skull and Bones, which has been, going on for ages in terms of its development and showing stuff off, but finally that's coming out in February. And other things, the surprise of February, I would say, is Tomb Raider 1 to 3 remastered.
Oh, okay.
Which sounds quite interesting. I remember playing the original Tomb Raider games on my PlayStation 1. And I think PC for one of them as well. So
yeah,
that could be interesting. That is coming out on pretty much everything. So I don't know how remastered that is. The original graphics were, compared to nowadays, probably pretty terrible. So I do wonder how they've butchered the graphics to make it lose all its nostalgia.
Yeah. No,
any of the games take your fancy?
I think the 2024 games I'm looking forward to, and much to your point about Warhammer, Space Marine 2 drops this year, which I'm very happy about. It got nudged back, so it's apparently meant to be like spring.
Is it Space Marine 2?
Yeah.
That's September 9th. You got ages to wait for that. You brought up the game that's literally last on my list in September. There's no other game after that listed.
Oh, that's fine.
So I did miss out Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is the second part of the Final Fantasy VII trilogy of remakes they're making. That's obviously quite big. A lot of people be looking forward to that one. Obviously, I just went through February there. There's other games coming out, this year that people want. Yeah, I'm sure there are some.
There's definitely more games. No, that's fair. I think for me, I makes Persona's an interesting one. I'll probably watch someone play that or do something along those lines. The Tomb Raider stuff, I'm interested to see, like you said, how they remaster it and all that sort of jazz. But yeah, there's nothing. I was saying this to my other half. It's just like there's nothing at the moment from a film and game perspective that makes me want to go watch stuff or go to the cinema or go buy a game. If that makes any sense at all.
Well, for the game, that's probably quite good. You know, that reduces the amount of games you'll be buying this year,
True.
which is obviously one of your goals. Yeah, I mean, the thing for me is I think like I've kind of cut off myself from kind of getting excited about new games. I very much said I'm playing certain games I already own, the kind of MMOs I already own, which both MMOs I own and play have expansions coming out this year. So, the Final Fantasy one, I've still got a lot of work to catch up to that bit. The WoW one, I'm just kind of waiting for when it comes out and to see how that is. But obviously, both of those for the MMO genre are completely new kind of storylines. Their own sagas are restarting. The Final Fantasy 14 one ended, when the expansion that came out 2 years ago, but then obviously has had updates since. But now they're restarting for a new kind of storyline. So it's kind of like starting from scratch with that. And that interests me heavily. And obviously the WoW one, which they announced at BlizzCon last year, the War Within's the first of the trilogy of ones they've announced. And again, is that going to save World of Warcraft? Maybe not. I don't know. I think Final Fantasy's probably actually done a better job, I would say, over the last number of years at trying to save itself from its original launch many years ago in 2015 now. But yeah, I think it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, I think what we're kind of finding nowadays, especially from my perspective, it's almost like I'm going to use the film a lot here. It's the classics, it's the nostalgic films everyone goes back to watch because they're just good. They're not rushed. They're not like thrown out the door last second. There's love, attention, and time put into them. A good example, and it might be controversial, but bugger it. Avatar 1 versus Avatar 2. Avatar 1 was very good. It was new, it was shiny, it had some great graphics. The story wasn't good, but like it looked amazing. Avatar 2 was just a rehash of the same story, kind of reset up again. And it was just the exact same kind of model, so no one was super impressed with it. But I think that's the kind of what we're dealing with at the moment from a holistic point of view of games. It's, hey, you like Persona 1, have Persona 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 all in the exact same format. I think people are becoming lazy and they're kind of running out of ideas or running out of like their knowledge. And I think you're finding, like you said, a lot of people are going into subscription-based genre, which is like World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, because it's good, new content's being given out, but it's what you need, it's what you like, and you're not dropping a lot of cash on it every year. Versus like Call of Duty and stuff, it's just a copy and paste, just a couple of more guns each time, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just insanely busy as well, so I got to choose what I want to play and be useful with my time. It's not like I can just be like, I've got every bit of hour of my year I can just spend playing games. So, it's just you gotta pick it. I mean, there's still a few games that do jump out to me that I have on my wish list that are coming out this year. Nightingale, which is the survival game, which I've had saved for ages.
Okay.
There's a game called Pacific Drive, which I saw a few things about, which looks really interesting. It's kind of like a horror driving game. That's coming out in February.
You sent me, out of curiosity, where you're in a car driving together.
No. This is a different one. It's a single player game, but like a single player story horror kind of thing. Which again, a lot of these kind of games, I think they're not day one buys for me. I don't think those ones stand out to me. I think Nightingale. I think that's its issue with the genre of survival games itself is that you never always watch someone else play a survival game first before you buy it now, because for it to be interesting and worth your money, it's got to be better than anything else released before it. When there's been enough in that genre, you've got to think more carefully about, is this actually better than just being a reskin of something else that is actually got more stuff and has been developed for longer.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think we've got like our little Discord full of games like World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14, League, Minecraft, Sims, like Valheim and all that sort of stuff. I think there's enough stuff to kind of keep us busy.
Yeah, some of those I'll never be playing ever again in my life. Valheim, which is probably quite a spicy take for a lot of people, since everyone loves Valheim. But I think it's painful. I think it's a painful game to play.
I think it's I think we just have different opinions on it, because the ending was a little bit of a sour note, because we worked quite hard to get to the end piece.
I don't think it was the ending that was shit. I think the whole playthrough was shocking. It was shocking and just had so loads of design decisions that I just disagreed with. But yeah, the ending where you just, I mean, yes, it's early access, but don't release updates like that. Finish the update. Yeah, if you're gonna add content, don't just leave it out as some random rubbish at the end. Anyway, that's Valheim. I won't go into that, since people do like that game.
We've also got Tarkov as well. Like, I think you're right. We've got a couple of games that we can play this year, just like on and off repeat. Lethal Company. I'm sure we'll pick up another game like Plates Up, or even go back to Plates Up as well. I think there's enough opportunity to pick stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do think this might be the year that COVID kind of catches up with, and actually doesn't deliver a lot of the games that it should do. And maybe 2024. That's this year. 2025 will offer better games than this year.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll just have to wait and see. But a lot of games that we haven't spoken about, that people are like, but what about this game? But don't have like a release date yet, but are coming out later this year. Those may be the ones that they haven't given a release date because they want to be ready and make sure it's good. So maybe there's some good ones that we're still going to wait for. Little Nightmares 3, that's another addition to a series I really, really like. That's probably will pick that up this year when it comes out, because you know what you're getting. And I love that world that they've built in Little Nightmares. That's my kind of like, I don't know, lore and ethos and kind of like that. I like that kind of mini horror aspect to it. But maybe we'll just have to wait and see.
You like cozy horror. Yeah, cozy horror.
Cozy horror, if there is such a thing.
Indeed. Okay, no, that sounds good. I'm looking forward to the year going ahead.
So obviously as technology has developed, other things that aren't necessarily gaming related do come out of it. VR is still an ever-growing market, still hasn't been taking up tons, but obviously things like the Oculus make it more available for people. Doesn't cost as much money if you're buying the full Valve VR kit or the HTC Vive when it came out. But this is definitely news that's come out today of the recording, which is effectively you can now get a diploma in the metaverse. And not just any metaverse, a VR anime high school. What do you think about this?
I want to joke and just say we're going down the more Ready Player One route. That's what it just sounds like. I don't know. What do you have to learn in this VR high school? Because I can see images and all I can see is anime, and I'm just very confused by it. But what do you get from this 3-year diploma? Is it like a physical diploma you get from school, or is it like
So it's well, we don't have necessarily it in the UK, but it's an American. I think they have in other countries mostly, but it's a high school diploma. So it's this, which is like a credit-based course. So like how Americans basically do it. And effectively, this course that they've designed in this anime metaverse it's recognized by the Japanese Ministry of Education, Culture and Sports, Science and Technology. But inside it, you've got like virtual events. The students who are learning inside it can go to festivals and esports tournaments in it. But in some way, this project is kind of like, I don't know, it feels like a good use of what a metaverse could be. Not some random thing you stick a headset on and you go play, virtual reality basketball with random people in the worst designed map ever. But something where you can come in home and you actually feel like you're in a classroom. So your kind of mind is kind of more focused on what's going on. I guess it's less boring. Maybe the design with the anime makes it more interesting to people. But yeah, it sounds like a useful use of VR in some way.
Yeah, I think this is what VR is meant to be for, right? So it's good for like the kids who are being homeschooled are the kids who are like, I'm using Americanisms for this, by the way, kids who are in like the middle of nowhere and it's like there's not much going on in their town or city. It's probably quite an easy way of doing it. It's an easy way of getting your credits out. And I'm sure if you, I don't know if it's like time sensitive where you have to do this like during the entire 3-year course, but if you can take it at your own pace, it's probably a good idea for some people who just want to focus on bits. And the, I don't know, the sports and kind of esports and all that sort of stuff, I think it's a great idea. Like holistically, it's a great concept, which I think is, like you said, it's got a great use case for the VR world. I'm just interested to see how it's going to be executed.
Yeah, I think, but the only thing that jumps out to me as something that it hasn't been mentioned around it is that, a lot of I don't know whether it was Meta or a different company, but, some of these companies have they used to have like a virtual office that you could enter in VR. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
I've seen loads of videos of this
stuff
where, instead of just sitting on like a Zoom or Google Meet call, effectively you are like, you put on your headset and you appear as avatars around a conference table in the 3D world. And I think that's ridiculous. I think that's stupid, personally. And you might be like, well, how's this any different? But I think like for children doing their like high school diploma, this could be like really like much more useful. Mm-hmm. Already from like the images, it looks a bit more kind of well designed than Meta's one. You actually have legs in this one, it seems. But yeah, I think like they're very two different things. But obviously they should hopefully have looked at why doesn't it, in my opinion, and I think many other people's opinions, does the workplace virtual work office based one not work, and how will this solve some of those problems, really? So I think that's really important.
I see where you're coming from. However, I think from an office perspective, it would have been quite good. A lot of the time when you're kind of like working from home and stuff like that, especially during COVID, not a lot of people had their cameras on. You just kind of heard voices and stuff like that. And even coming back to the office and stuff like that, I've met people for the first time hearing their voice, but actually not seeing what they've looked like yet. I think for me, like the metaverse kind of office idea is not bad from like a social team building kind of, I can say it's workshopping perspective. I think day-to-day stuff, I completely agree with you. It's not super helpful. But then I think it also causes you to like focus, because a lot of people I've seen on like calls and stuff like that aren't really tuned in. They're off doing like 4 other different things at the same time. But I think this is a great use case. I don't know if it will eventually go to the office kind of building site and kind of all that sort of stuff. But I think it's a good start for 10. It'll be a good use case or a good start, like a good pilot idea going forward.
I think like this for like education solves like as a few number of problems, like you've said, like isolated students and stuff like that. That this could be a massive help for them. And I get that what you're saying about the workplace, but I think like in a work-based scenario, is the actual engagement going to produce actually better work for like a workplace? I'm not entirely sure, but I can see this captivating people a bit more, and actually, having worked as a teacher for many years, I do understand how this could be massively helpful. But then also working in industry, I also understand how much I would have hated doing that in an office sense, but actually wouldn't have minded it in an educational sense.
Yeah, I think it depends. I think if it was like, oh yeah, you can choose to do this from a work perspective if you want to be social. If not, you can just join the Teams calls. Completely fine. I think if it becomes mandatory from workplace, I can get why it's annoying, because you'd have to whack it on, do your work stuff, and then kind of deal with it. Education piece, I also think it's really good, because if you're like we talked about, if you're stuck somewhere, if you're uncomfortable, if you're halfway across the world, it's a good place to socialize and kind of build up those social skills. My only concern is like, are we putting too much time and too much focus in the virtual world versus like the real world? Like, I get it from a school point of view, you can take more students in, you can have more classes, you require less land, it's going to be less expensive to run. You teach,
but that's not that. But you're forgetting the key thing, which is actually more about engagement. Is that your lessons? If you've got suddenly you're talking about DNA, suddenly in the middle of the room is a 3D, DNA sequence that you can then go through. Like, that's more, you can see that, and like the solar system. Then instead the classroom suddenly turns into space, and you see all the planets and stuff like that, and that's how you learn. That's where the usefulness comes in, and the engagement and interaction. That is not, you can't translate that to your workplace necessarily, unless you're going to be like, here's a 3D bar chart where everyone's now in the bar chart. It's not the same, and I don't see it unless you're like in an architectural firm and then you're you're visualizing that kind of stuff. But I think that if it's just like, as we're talking about the virtual office, we're not going into the actual other details of what like the architectural firm stuff like that is very different. It's worthless.
So I think you have no head. As long as it's collaborative and it's bringing people in to go test stuff out, I think it's a good use case. So for education, I don't think it's an issue with this at all. For work stuff, I think they could probably refine it, but it'll be good for workshopping and the people are based all around the world to kind of get that social aspect of going into the office. Because there are some companies that are like worldwide and people don't actually see each other or come on at the same time. But if you have Paul who's in the office or the virtual office at 2 a.m. in the morning doing work, and he happens to bump into, I don't know, John, who's in another office halfway across the road, but his working time, it gives them a bit of socialization stuff. That's the only thing I could imagine. Or, like you said, architectural building or design firms and stuff like that. Those are the good workshops for it. But yeah.
It's like, oh, hi, John. What's the weather like where you are? I don't know. I've got my headset on. I'm in this virtual world, so my real world is complete and utterly alienated to me, and my wife won't talk to me. That's what it's like, I think. Yeah. I think you got the social thing, but is work meant to be social? Is that important to your company? I don't think so.
I think it depends on your company ethos. Like some companies are very down for the social bit. Some of them are very much like get your work and go. But no, I think it'll be interesting. And I do find it funny that we're slowly turning into like a more of like a VR society, Ready Player One stuff. It's very interesting, but we'll see. So going off our virtual school discussion, Ollie, I personally have found myself playing less and less single player game experiences and find myself being drawn to more like multiplayer social game experiences. And for me personally, I find that as a better experience of a game. You get to talk about it, you get to share moments, you get to have laughs with each other and all that sort of stuff. I am coming to the realization that I think multiplayer games or games with a multiplayer or social capacity to them are better than single player experiences.
I don't think you can compare. I don't think you can say they're just better because they are completely different. And that's just I think that's more an opinionated based statement rather than like something that's generally seen as fact. Because some people, they're completely different experiences, right? The multiplayer one, you're not going to have, here we go. Look at it. I hate using this example. I really do. Let's look at Call of Duty over the years. Okay. All of them have always had single player, multiplayer. Okay. Mm-hmm. So with GTA, let's look at GTA 5 and let's add that to the mix as well. Now, some people will really like that for GTA 6, which is all they've shown so far, has the single player, right? That's all they've shown so far as a story, and that's the kind of world and stuff like that, and that's what people are excited for, okay? But then obviously there's going to be other people who will look at that and will ignore that all Rockstar have currently shown for GTA 6 is kind of the story-based elements and introduce the characters in the world, and they will only dedicate themselves to looking at the landscape that has been shown, bearing in mind there has been no real mechanics shown in the entire trailer that Rockstar released for GTA 6 so far. And they'll go, that world looks great to play in GTA Online, right? Mm-hmm. And those are two very different people. There could be people who like both, by the way, and are just looking forward to both, obviously, which is probably the right way to go about it if you want to just enjoy GTA and you're a GTA player. But some people will not care for the others. Same with Call of Duty. I don't have statistics for this, and I don't think they're released anywhere, but it would be great to see which Call of Duty games the number of people who played multiplayer, which is probably a majority of people who play multiplayer COD, compared to people who played the single player campaign. Because I bet there's people who buy this Call of Duty game and do not at all play the story mode.
I think that was even valid at like our school though. When you and I used to go to school, I think when COD dropped and stuff like that, people would just literally skip the storyline and jump straight into the online play.
I didn't. Right? I played the single player. I liked the Call of Duty 4 storyline. Obviously, that started off the whole Modern Warfare, which is basically what we continuously go for now for COD. But then also like World at War.
No,
had
but
a decent story. Obviously, had zombies and the multiplayer and stuff, and that's what really built it out. But you know, I think you're again going from a view where of people who played it, but actually, there will be people who will never have touched the multiplayer who bought Call of Duty.
No, that's fair. So I think for me, I played more of the single player than the multiplayer stuff. But I remember specifically when we were at school, someone going up to me being like, "Oh yeah, I bought the game. I'm just playing the online stuff. I'm not really interested in the story." And I think with Call of Duty, that seems to be the majority of the way it goes for those sorts of games. At least it's more of like a social game than like a single player experience. And my point being, basically, I think social games. Games with the ability to have social interaction is better. So a good example is Elden Ring, the mod that we were playing that we talked about previously. I've had more fun playing that than I did the initial Elden Ring game by itself.
Yeah, right.
And for me,
I think that's yeah, but that is. Oof, the problem, and we've spoken about this before with multiplayer, is that multiplayer heavily relies on the people you're playing with and their personality.
yeah,
And if you don't have a group of people who you like playing with, multiplayer is incredibly sad and unenjoyable.
no, I completely agree. I think for me for me personally, the gaming experience is enhanced with the fact you have more people. So for instance, when we're playing Elden Ring, I enjoy the fact that you and I can kind of play our own different builds and have fun with it, and then try and basically like work way through it. But if not, we can almost like try and jank our way through or try and cheese it to get through bosses and stuff like that in a fun manner. Lethal Company, I'm enjoying more in like a bigger setting because it's just more chaos and more things to kind of juggle. Likewise, a good example is Tarkov, for instance. I wouldn't have fun playing Tarkov. I enjoy playing Tarkov yourself because it's just a better, more enjoyable shared experience in that sort of manner. Like you have shared memories.
I'm a god gamer after all, aren't I?
True, you are a god gamer who gets domed by guys in corridors. But I think realistically for me, like shared experiences are really like a big thing in gaming. Like everyone talks about the first time they defeated the boss together in World of Warcraft, or if they were playing, trying to think of some other examples of games here. Like Valheim, we talked about the first couple of times we played that. That was quite good. Sims to a degree, like not the multiplayer stuff, but like a shared social experience. Like those sorts of experiences are better shared as a group because you can talk about them, you can relate to them, you can go back and kind of link them up again. Even League, like as much as we were very 50-50 hot and cold League, it was a better experience. It was a better experience as a group, even Final Fantasy and stuff like that. And even
well, of course, if you're going to play solo queue in League compared to playing with a group of friends, it's like obviously night and day which one is going to be more enjoyable, hopefully. But I think, but also, like I said previously when we spoke about this, I have a different like mood when I play different multiplayer games or games. Like sometimes I will just want to chill, and other ones I like to do stuff with people, and I'll feel more like, okay, I've got the energy to play multiplayer games. I feel like I have to have enough energy to play multiplayer games, mainly for myself because I won't enjoy it as much if I don't have the energy. But also, I just there's the kind of relaxation and the kind of, like I said, you kind of, when you're playing a single player game or you're playing a game which you can play single player that might be multiplayer. So like, let's say Final Fantasy, for example, has the story elements, which you should always do. I feel like you should do yourself. But then you've got loads of the other dungeons and raids that you do with other people. And that's obviously what you want to do with them. I mean, you can queue into dungeons in Final Fantasy 14 with NPCs and you do the dungeon with them. I think I did that once when I couldn't find a queue for one particular dungeon. But other than that, I always play with other people. Especially as a healer, I need to because it's much more satisfying. Yeah. But I think it definitely depends on people, and maybe games have got better at being multiplayer. Games have got better, is what I meant to say. Yeah. I think games like Lethal Company would not have existed 10 years ago. You would not, even though there's a lot of simplicity behind Lethal Company and how it works. It could have been created 10 years ago. The graphics definitely could have been created 10 years ago. But but it's a very different type of game that people weren't playing 10 years ago. The kind of way Roblox has developed with young people and how you go into that and you got all these games and experiences that people have made. The guy who made Lethal Company made games in Roblox before. That was his first like major game he released. So again, he grew up in that area and he knew what the market was wanting, and he did very well at it. But then things like, Plates Up did very well. The kind of streamer era has brought things like Plate Ups along. If streaming wasn't as much the thing now, I don't think games like Lethal Company and Plate Up would have done as well.
No, I think that's completely fair. Like, I think we're in that, like you said, we're in that era where most play games are just better than they were previously. But yeah, I think personally, if you want to have a better time or you want to have a better experience, multiplayer games are a better way of enjoying or heightening the gameplay experience. I find single player games kind of cool. Or if you're all watching around like someone play a game, it's quite cool to watch. But I don't know. I think holistically, games are better enjoyed socially, and I think that's also why Twitch is so popular, because everyone enjoys watching other people play games, or everyone enjoys video games. But everyone wants to be part of that experience, part of that shared kind of story, and that's why I think some Twitch games are really popular, like God of War. Trying to think of other stuff, Baldur's Gate, and all that sort of jazz.
Yeah, but I mean, Baldur's Gate has done very well. Again, I guess in some way, a lot of people like the narrative, and again, like even some of the storylines and features of that game, you again wouldn't have probably seen in a game 10 years ago. I think gaming has definitely changed, and it will continue to change for many years to come.
Yeah,
and I guess in some way, I don't think yet gaming has reached a cycle where it goes back to like, we just want straightforward multiplayer shooter ups, right? I think people want something new. They want something that exciting, that hasn't been done before, that makes things slightly complex. But then you look at games like RPG games. Mm-hmm. If Oblivion compared to Skyrim is vastly different in its simplicity. Skyrim is much more simplistic in how it does its RPG elements, and that worked well because they saw what people's attitudes were. But if you look at things like Baldur's Gate, for example, that's now gone in a completely different direction where things are slightly more complex. If you're doing proper builds, same with like Dark Souls, Elden Ring, I've seen screenshots where people have been like, is my Elden Ring build good? And they're basically like just got level 30 in all the skills, which as us who have played those type of games is really bad, because it's not the type of game where you want to even out all your skills like you would have done in other RPGs. Now, like simplistic RPGs, you actually only want to go like build in dexterity, only put some in endurance, only enough that you need. It's those kind of and if you're not doing magic, you're not going to do any in arcane or faith. Like again, you kind of plan it out a bit better, and that's the old style RPG compared to like more modern ones, which are much more simplistic and understandable for people and more casual gamers. So I don't know. I think gaming is wild because you can design one thing and it can be seen as good by a group of people and be seen as trash by completely a load of other people as well. It's very opinionated.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So we're going to end off the podcast with some news that's gathered around this time of recording. Obviously, depends. Most of these take 2 weeks, and then when we kind of put them out, there's usually that kind of delay. So some of it's not like current events, but there's still important things that people might have missed and think that can have like an effect on other things coming up. So one of the ones that I've got here is that Valve have been basically breaking up open source projects recently. Two main ones, Portal 64, which is kind of like a Nintendo 64 remake of Portal, and TF2 Source 2. And that's been, both have been taken down, both on GitHub and been taken down. And obviously Source 2 has been out a good number of years now, but people have always been trying to port old Valve games to Source 2. Things like, for example, Half-Life has been ported, but then they were told they couldn't use like Source 2 in the title. or even Half-Life. So that had to change. But obviously, these two games, which people clearly were very passionate about, Valve thought it's time to bring down the hammer. And I think that shows like a different Valve than what used to happen, because Valve used to effectively look at these projects and then basically hire the people working on them. But this time it seems that they've lawyered up a bit more. So that's quite a big change from Valve. What do you think?
I think the whole game industry's changed quite dramatically. I think it's like most things, right? It's good for a time, and then someone ruins it for everyone else, and then, like you said, everyone lawyers up, or everyone starts building their piles, and then goes, "This is my pile. You can't touch it. If you want to touch this pile, you have to pay to enter." Like that sort of stuff. Like Nintendo used to be pretty good with like emulators and stuff like that, and they cracked down significantly, and then sent like, I think Bowser or something like that. They sent him to like jail, and he owes them money now. I think it's just like more corporate guys are coming into like a creative industry and starting to basically just rule it with an iron fist and go, right, if we want to make money, these are the things we need to implement in order to protect ourselves. I think it's a time to come thing. It'll get worse before it gets better, and then eventually someone will shoot off and do their own thing again. And you'll get like another Steam. But yeah, no, I think I'm not surprised. It doesn't shock me that Valve's killing off Portals 64 and the TF2 Source stuff. It's just like, I don't know, the real creative step back eventually, because it becomes a money making machine or a business, and then the lawyers and the accountants have to step up and kind of run it efficiently, right? So it makes sense why they're doing it.
Yeah. So watch that, see what happens, see if anything comes to that, if they come back with a different skin or a different name or what's going on there. So that's interesting to follow. But another thing that's made the news, and although this is UK based, this could start to be seen elsewhere, is that Game, the kind of popular UK British brick and mortar game store, has halted and will no longer accept any trade-ins for its games at the store, which is obviously that's quite a big thing, because trading in video games into shops has been around for a significant time. I don't know. Did you growing up? Did you get secondhand games from Game or elsewhere?
Yeah, I think like there was like a Canadian version called EB Games that I would go to get secondhand games from, and I think I occasionally did it from Game, but. Isn't it, and I might be wrong here, so I've got two theories. The first one is, I thought games nowadays are now locked to the console they're played on, at least the physical ones, so that might explain it. Is that right, or is that wrong? Like PS5 and stuff. I remember it being like a conversation that you couldn't swap games anymore because they were physically locked or digitally locked to a type of game.
I don't know. I don't think that's technically true. I think it might depend on like the DLC or some other things. I haven't heard of that before for PlayStation. I mean, I don't really follow console rules like that much, so maybe that is something I need to look at, but I've never heard of that before.
Okay, it might be me, then I might be talking out my butt. I remember it being a conversation at some point, that was all. And the second one is, I've walked into Game recently, and I'm going to be brutally honest, I don't see Game lasting that much longer. Because I walk into Game, and they're selling Nerf guns, they're selling board games, they were occasionally selling Warhammer for a bit. They were just like scattering as quickly as they could. They're doing like secondhand phones and secondhand consoles and all that sort of stuff. And I think they're trying to diversify what they can, because realistically, a kid now who lives like an hour away from a game store is more likely to get their parents to let them buy the game digitally and download it with like a 2 terabyte PS5 than go into the store and go buy it. Like, when's the last time you bought a physical game, Ollie, in that you can remember?
Ooh. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And I'm not
do you know what? I actually think the last physical game, it will be like a Switch game though, won't it? It'll be a Switch, because Switch's store is kind of
scuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
before if I wasn't talking Switch here, the last game I properly bought was Red Dead Redemption 2 when it came out on PS4.
So I think I've done the exact same thing. I've got Red Dead Redemption 2 next door, and I think that is literally the last game I remember purchasing it physically, apart from Switch games. And I think it's just the way it is at the moment. Like, you can go into Tesco's, or you can go into like a PC or Curry's and stuff like that, pick up your Switch games, but I think game has run its buck, unfortunately, and it's going the way of the dodo. Because realistically, if you go into game, the game's not there. You just go onto Amazon, you get next day delivery again, right?
Yeah, and obviously, obviously, we're talking a British store here, but like GameStop in the US, although its stocks have had a roller coaster of a ride the last couple of years, they're failing. They went into NFTs to diversify, and that's now been cut. That ended this week at the time of recording. And obviously, that's they're probably, I don't even know if they still do trade. They probably do trade-ins there, but that's what I mean. This game you went to, the shop, it's like its own shop in like a shopping center.
So it's the one, I think I've taken you there before. It's one that we go into the other town and we walk into the shopping center, and there's also one in Blue Water as well. And both of them do the exact same models. It's like, you want to buy a board game, you want to buy books, you want to buy Fortnite merchandise, you want to buy, I don't know, like thumb pads, you want to buy joysticks, you want to buy secondhand stuff, you want to buy a laptop. Like, games are almost like pushed to the back of the store now, or pushed to one side of the store. Like, next time we go into a game store, even people listening, look at what percentage is video games and what percentage is other merchandise.
It's probably quite high. But I mean, like you say, the back of the wall is only games. Literally, my closest game, is inside a Sports Direct shop, and it's literally at the back. It's upstairs. It's upstairs. So you go up an escalator, and so at the weekend. I went last Friday. I went to go buy some football boots. So I go to Sports Direct, which, for those who don't know, is like a kind of massive, it's like a massive warehouse type shop where you go in. They've got like sportswear, shoes, football, everything. Like, it's quite a big deal in the UK, Sports Direct kind of shops. But there is a game inside the shop, back of the upstairs, and it's its own area, but it's tiny. That is the close. I say it's tiny. It's actually not a bad size. It's probably the equivalent size of a game shop, but it's like, in comparison to the size of the Sports Direct, which is huge, it's tiny. It's wild, and it's crazy. Like, I mean, to be honest, I only ever walked up. I didn't, not last Friday, but I've been to that Sports Direct twice. I'm not a huge sports person. The other one was actually to buy football boots, but for AstroTurf, not for the grass I bought last Friday. But I went there, got my football boots, tried them on, and the boots are all upstairs in a Sports Direct. And I see the till. I walk up to it. I'll pay for these boots, and he goes, "Sir, this is game." I'm like, "What? What do you mean this is game? This is Sports Direct. What the hell?" That's it's quite.
Damn.
I feel like I should take you to that just so you see it. And you're like, what the hell is this place?
No, it's fine. If you do that next time you come down, I'll show you around the other two, and I'll point out like the percentage of game stuff versus everything else, or like their side businesses, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we'll have to maybe that is the only way they make money.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, have to wait and see.
I think final bit from me before we end. So 2 parts to this. The first part is we've got all our socials up and running now for the podcast. So we're amalgamating and merging them into like a single one. So you can now find us on Instagram, Ollie, at Digital Engineers. And then we can now. We've also got our TikTok, which is Digital Engineers as well. I'll get all that added to the description below. So that way it's a one-stop shop for all of our great merchandise and all our great socials and stuff like that. So I will go into a game later this week, take a picture, post it, and be like, there are no good games, podcast discussion, what percentage of games stores now actually just sell games. And then I think that kind of covers the social aspect. So you can now find us on a bunch of different stuff. Our YouTube and stuff is going to be separate for the time being, but we'll post up shorts on our socials in one. And then finally, Ollie, this is a question for you, but also a question to all our viewers to ask in the poll, or ask in the question and answers below at the end of this podcast. What do you think the new craze is going to be for video games in 2024? So a couple of years ago, we had zombies being a craze for a period of time. We had space, I think, last year and the year before. What do you think, Ollie, is going to be the new like fan craze or the new like motif for 2024 gaming?
Voice chat.
VoIP. Okay.
Yeah. If a game doesn't ship with voice chat, it's probably not going to do very well. Unless it's a single player game, at which point it would be a weird inconvenience for a developer to add that to their game.
Yeah, add a dictation game for a call. You have to dictate which way you're going.
No, I know what it is. Sorry, it's
What?
AI. It's the use of AI. That's what
AI
it is.
generated
I'm already
maps,
calling it.
AI
I already did a public talk about this, and I'm telling you right now, and I already know because Steam have decided to go back on what they decided previously, and now they're allowing AI games. And I'm telling you right now, prepare for your Steam store and other places to be filled with games that advertise themselves to be made with AI.
Okay. So that's your pitch for this year. I think it's going to be space.
I hate it.
What? You hate my pitch?
No, I don't hate your pit. I kind of interrupted you before you finished your pit.
No,
I
it's
hate
fine.
the AI thing. It's going to happen, but I hate it. But anyway, so yours is you think space is staying.
I think space is going to stay for the year. I think it's going to be a space themed year. But I think to your AI point, it's a necessary evil that has to happen before we decide maybe it's not a good idea. But yeah, let us know your thoughts below in the questions and answers. What do you think the game motif is going to be for this year, or the game? I don't know. I want to say like the essence in a bottle is for this year. You think it's AI? I think it's space. Let us know below. Yeah, thank you very much for listening, guys. I've been joined by Ollie, and we'll see you in the next episode.